Greetings and peace. I would like to begin with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. Today's presentation, I would like to delve deep into the Moorish Mediterranean past and the pre-1717 origins of Freemasonry. I hope you enjoy this presentation, and thank you always for sticking with me. This presentation is dedicated to Brother Nathan Duncan Bay in recognition of sincere inquiry, fearless scholarship, and commitment to truth beyond inherited narratives. It honors the spirit of disciplined study and ethical application rather than institutional allegiance. This work does not encourage anyone to join Freemasonry. It invites viewers to extract timeless teachings, ethical refinement, self-knowledge, and universal brotherhood, and apply them meaningfully within their own lives and traditions. This presentation is produced for entertainment, free speech, and educational purposes. It examines historical claims, primary sources, and comparative initiatic traditions without instructing ritual participation or lodge activity. Viewers are encouraged to explore further via the playlist Islam, Sufism, and Freemasonry on the Salman S. Sheikh YouTube channel, yours truly, which provides public commentary and historical discussion relevant to the themes explored herein. This presentation examines the Masonic degree known as the Mediterranean Pass and situates it within a broader initiatic continuum that predates the 1717 Grand Lodge narrative. It treats Freemasonry as a trans-civilizational system shaped by necessity, exchange, and continuity. By integrating primary Masonic testimony with medieval history and Islamic initiatic structures, the presentation argues that Middle Eastern influence is central, not peripheral, to the development of higher Masonic degrees. For millennia, the Mediterranean basin served as a corridor for sacred architecture, mathematics, symbolism, and ethical systems. Knowledge flowed between Egypt, the Levant, Anatolia, North Africa, and Southern Europe. Freemasonry's symbols and methods align naturally with this environment of exchange, challenging the claim that it emerged suddenly within an insular English context. The Mediterranean Pass was a recognition mechanism conferred upon Knights Templar and later Knights of Malta to ensure safe passage across seas and territories governed by non-Christians. Its function was initiatic and diplomatic rather than theological, indicating a shared symbolic language across religious boundaries. Brother L.C. Delude, writing in the Freemasons Quarterly Review, the second series from 1846, which is in London under the United Grand Lodge of England, explicitly identifies the Mediterranean Pass as evidence of brotherly recognition between Christian, the Turk, the Moor, and Jew. This testimony originates from a long-serving Mason with extensive continental experience and not a modern revisionist agenda. Here is the text from the Freemasons Quarterly Review, second series, 1846, based in London, the United Grand Lodge of England. Here is the text as follows. The higher degrees of Masonry are of Christian origin, via the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, Knights of Malta, Knights Templar, and the latter certificate commences with the words, "In the name of the most and holy and undivided Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost." And here, Brother Delude talks about his own certificate in Belfast, which kind of deludes to the same. This and the drinking vessel in which the Knights Templar pledges himself are proofs and evidence of these degrees being of Christian origin. From these degrees, Jews were excluded, and none but Christians can or will be admitted, which in the modern setting, many of these lodges and appendant bodies are beginning to change many of those factors. The Order of Knights Templar commenced about 728 years ago, at the time of the Crusades, and as those knights had frequently occasion to cross the seas in divers countries of non-believers in Christianity, they were instructed and provided with certain passwords, signs, and tokens to pass their way unmolested among the Algerian and Moorish Masons. And one of those places was Cyprus, where the Knights were based, and Jacques de Molay, of course, and the Naqshbandi Sufi order is based in Cyprus. So, what are the odds of that? So, 728 years ago, when this second series was published in the 1800s, was in the 11th century. So, way before 1717. And here it is, an English Grand Lodge source talking about Moorish Masons, Muslim Masons, right? In the Algeria area, in the Mediterranean area, right? Masons who had their own password signs and tokens. So whether the high degrees of Masonry are of Christian origin, right, that doesn't matter, because Muslims and that Moorish Masonic Muslim system predates all of that. And those elements were added into what we know as Freemasonry today. As we continue, a mutual agreement between the believers and non-believers in Christ, the Mediterranean Pass, a degree given by the Moorish Muslim Masons, only given to the Knights Templars and afterwards to the Knights of Malta, was given to them to make use of in case of obstruction or hindrance. Even by their greatest opponents in respect of religion, it was given, received, and responded to with every token of brotherly love and friendship. By this, then, it proves clearly that an amicable brotherly agreement was established between Christian, Turk, Moor, and Jew to be recognized as brothers of the same family and children of the great architect of the universe. So this degree system predates the 1717 Masonic English monopoly narrative, right, from the 11th century. So it's there, right? And even in the Scottish Rite degrees, you see that interaction, whether it's the Knight of St. Andrew degree or the other degrees, which shows how the Muslims were already there in the picture. And even with Saladin, right? Saladin and Richard the Lionheart were brothers of the same esoteric orders, like how Masons on the opposite sides, when they recognized each other, they spared each other's lives. In the Civil War, World War II, same with Richard and Saladin, and they would greet each other with the lion's grip, Richard the Lionheart. Chivalric degrees employed Christian invocations while simultaneously operating within universal ethical frameworks. Form and function diverged without contradiction. This mirrors older initiatic systems where local religious expression concealed perennial philosophical structures. Islamic civilization preserved and expanded geometry, architecture, astronomy, ethics, and esotericism during Europe's medieval fragmentation. These sciences later re-entered Europe through Spain, Sicily, and the Crusader states, shaping guild and the chivalric culture. And many of the chivalry teachings and brotherhoods were reintroduced to Europe through Islam and the Moorish presence in Spain, which brought Europe out of darkness and into the Renaissance. Islamic fatwa orders combined ethical chivalry, initiation, graded instruction, and symbolic labor, features strikingly parallel to later Masonic lodges. These brotherhoods emphasized moral refinement, humility, secrecy, and service, forming a plausible structural ancestor. Sufi metaphysics emphasized inner purification, symbolic ascent, and sacred geometry as reflections of cosmic order. Such concepts reappear in Masonic symbolism as allegory rather than doctrine, enabling interfaith participation. As we all know, the Knights Templar operated for generations alongside Muslim polities, engaging in truces, diplomacy, and shared codes of honor. This proximity enabled symbolic and procedural exchange beyond simplistic crusade narratives. Recognition systems are ancient tools used by initiatic bodies to ensure safe passage and mutual trust. The Mediterranean Pass fits this universal pattern rather than a uniquely European invention. Brother Delude affirms that Jewish Masons were never refused admission in continental lodges and that Christianity was absent from symbolic workings. This reinforces Masonry's universal foundation prior to later sectarian reinterpretations. The United Grand Lodge of England formalized administration but did not invent Masonry ex nihilo, which means in Latin out of nothing. Pre-existing systems were standardized, not created at this moment. The Templar suppression was driven by political and financial motives rather than doctrinal discovery. Initiatic knowledge historically migrates under pressure rather than vanishing. Scotland's resistance to papal authorities provided a plausible refuge for displaced chivalric traditions. Scottish Masonry later preserved explicitly chivalric narratives absent elsewhere. The ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, the AASR, culminates in chivalric and Templar symbolism, indicating preservation rather than fantasy. Its structure reflects layered inheritance rather than Enlightenment improvisation. And we see in the Scottish Rite, right, even in America, quote unquote, we see at the top of the pyramid, the 33rd degree, basically shows how when the Knights Templars fled to Scotland, they basically survived and re-emerged in what we know as Freemasonry. That's the truth. And the Mother Grand Lodge of the world, in my eyes, is Scotland, not England. So that's why the Scottish Rite, and at the 33rd degree, you are given that revelation of being a survivor of the Knights Templars. So Scotland, Scottish Rite, Knights Templar, 33rd degree, and how even the hat of the Knights Templar or the hat of the Scottish Rite, right, with the 33rd, is the Templar cross. So it's basically all self-evident in that structure. We also examine Frederick of Prussia, guardian of the Rite. Frederick II of Prussia, also known as Frederick the Great, played a foundational role in formalizing the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite in the 18th century. He was not just a monarch, but a philosopher king, deeply interested in mysticism and Masonic ideals. Under his influence, the Scottish Rite became a vessel for the esoteric teachings of the Knights Templar, and he is credited with safeguarding their deeper secrets within the structure of the 33 degrees. Frederick's vision was not about ritual for ritual's sake. It was about preserving light through dark times. Here is a snapshot of the Freemasons' quarterly review, the second edition or the second series, based in London with the United Grand Lodge of England in 1846. And even here they honor Frederick the Great in terms of the 33rd degree Supreme Council. And I wanted to put a snapshot of this. I remember when I did a video on Freemasonry in Pakistan, my home country, Pakistan, right? And if you go to the UGLE's website, they have the foreign Grand Lodges section, right? The Grand Lodges that are recognized. And they had the District Grand Lodge of Pakistan listed there because it still exists after they were removed from Pakistan in 1972. They are exiled and survive under England. And one of the lodge, Quetta Lodge, also meets in London. So after I had made my video, and then you check the website, they had removed the listing of the District Grand Lodge of Pakistan. So in case like they removed the internet publication of the Freemasons Quarterly Review, right, from 1846, because it mentions the Mediterranean Pass degree. So that's why I'm posting this here for the record. As we see the 33rd degree, we learn the true oath. In the 33rd and final degree of the Scottish Rite, the initiate is given a shocking revelation that he is symbolically the spiritual descendant of the true Knights Templar. He is instructed to uphold the legacy of Jacques de Molay and to swear a spiritual vengeance against the historical enemies of the Templars, namely the Knights of Malta. This vengeance is not one of violence, but of remembrance and truth-telling. The candidate learns the truth that was buried by the Church, that the Templars carried hidden knowledge from the East, safeguarded by mystics, Sufis, and Moors, and how when they went to Scotland, they survived. Hence the Scottish Rite, Scotland, the 33rd degree, then the truth of being a survivor of the Knights Templar. So it's all interconnected. And the true Mother Grand Lodge is Scotland, not England, in my eyes. The Templars were also accused of worshipping Baphomet or Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. This is a cross, a picture of a cross found in a Knights Templar church in Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. And you see the cross, right, depicting a prophet-like figure on it. So that was basically the case. And there are many of these relics which are now supposedly they are wiping from the internet. The Arabization of the Knights Templars. The charges against them accused them of being crypto-Muslim with worshipping of Baphomet, who was also signified with the different spelling and enunciations as Muhammad in the French, which is basically Muhammad, and denial of Christ. and they were persecuted on a Friday, the holy day for Islam. The Templars made treaties in the Holy Land with Muslims contrary to French interest, and betraying Frankish armies to Muslims during periods of conflicts. Robert of St. Albans, an English Knights Templar who converted to Islam and married Saladin's niece. In the 1270s, the Templar commander in Sidon, Matthew Savage, also spelt Sermaj, and the Mamluk ruler of Egypt, Sultan Baybars, were blood brothers. And Hugues de Payens, the co-founder and the first Grand Master, was a descendant of Moorish Sufis, and he was inducted into the mysteries by his grandfather, who was a Moorish Sufi as well. And if you look at the Pagani family crest in Sicily, you see the heads of the three Moors on there, which is also connected to Hugues de Payens. This is another source that has been kind of wiped out from the internet in terms of the London Evening News clipping from September 3rd, 1918, which shows that Freemasons in Palestine, not the so-called entity that we're dealing with today that claims superiority in that part of the world. So Palestine was always there. So Freemasons in Palestine from September 3rd, 1918, have held a Masonic meeting on the historic site of King Solomon's Temple, where Freemasonry is supposed to have originated about 1000 BC. This meeting was organized by members of the New Zealand Expeditionary Force in Palestine. The Mosque of Omar being on the site of the temple, the New Zealanders approached the great sheikh in charge of the mosque for permission. Then occurred an incident showing the universality of the order. The sheikh listened to what the strangers had to say, and then to their amazement and surprise, he asked if there were any Masons among them. The rest was easy. He declared himself a Mason, and at the meeting he acted as one of the guards of the lodge. The place within the mosque where the meeting was held is known as the Cave of the Rock of the Dome, and is believed to have been the Holy of Holies of the Old Temple, as it is today the Mosque of Omar. Soldiers of all ranks were present, and after a lodge had been duly constituted and opened, resolutions were passed, conveying fraternal greetings and good wishes to the various Grand Lodges to the Lodge in New Zealand and the Brethren on service in France. Middle Eastern symbolism in high degrees. Temple imagery, sacred geometry, numerology, and cosmic architecture originate in the ancient Near East. These entered Europe primarily through Islamic and Jewish transmission. The great architect of the universe. This concept enables philosophical monotheism without sectarian dogma. Its framing aligns naturally with Islamic and Jewish theology. So basically Tawheed, right? To believe in a supreme creator. Common objection, no written proof. Initiatic systems transmit orally and symbolically. Absence of bureaucratic documentation is expected, not suspicious. Primary testimonies like deludes carry weight precisely because they predate modern polemics. Common objection, romantic Templarism. This analysis avoids sensational claims and relies on structural continuity and documented practice. Ritual survival does not require institutional survival. Common objection, the English centrality. English Masonry reflects one regional expression, not the totality of the tradition. Continental and Middle Eastern data challenges this monopoly narrative. Why the Mediterranean past matters? The past is material evidence of interfaith initiatic recognition. It undermines claims of rigid medieval sectarianism. We have to look at this from beyond the European monopoly, that civilizations advance through exchange, not isolation. Freemasonry reflects this universal law. And for those that have seen my work throughout the years and my books and presentations, you see it, whether it's Freemasonry, Knights Templars, right, Rosicrucianism, OTO, Thelema, there is an Eastern influence and origins that are there, which have been proven not only by myself but other people. So, the monopoly and the supremacy and the isolation needs to stop, and that bridge between East and West needs to be established again for everyone's benefit. The conclusion for the first half of this presentation is that Freemasonry is best understood as a Mediterranean and Middle Eastern heirloom refined in Europe. The 1717 myth dissolves under primary evidence and comparative analysis. Here are references and sources I recommend for the first half of this presentation. especially the Freemasons Quarterly Review, the second series from 1846, which basically has the aspect of the Mediterranean Pass and the degree structure, and of course the other books that I recommend here as well. So take a moment and please take a snapshot of this. Now we examine the second half of this presentation. Who are the true Knights Templars? And this is inspired by Brother Salim Hakim of Prince Hall Lodge number 57 in Philadelphia. Why does this investigation matter? We see that modern Freemasonry is full of theater and regalia, but rarely substance. Amid the confusion lies the legacy of the Knights Templar, portrayed as Christian warriors, yet embedded in Masonic tradition. This presentation pulls back the curtain to expose that, number one, the real Templars were defenders of all faiths. They were not the ignorant bigots that exist today who use the Templar symbolism of Deus Vult and all of that nonsense. Their roots and alliances reached into Islamic, Sufi, and Moorish mysticism, as shown in the Mediterranean Pass degree. And the Scottish Rite, not the York Rite, carries their spiritual DNA. The York Rite illusion. The York Rite parades Templar knights in European pageantry, swords, white robes, and crosses. Yet these same orders deny any meaningful connection to Jacques de Molay or his true purpose. Oh yeah, modern Freemasonry has nothing to do with the Knights Templars. Yeah, okay, whatever. They want the image, not the sacrifice, the symbol, not the soul. What actually happened to the Knights Templars? By 1307, the Templars were wealthy, powerful, and international, and that scared the papacy. Pope Clement V and King Philip IV of France conspired with the Knights of Malta to betray them. Accusations of heresy, brotherhood with Muslims, and protecting hidden doctrines led to Jacques de Molay's execution, but their legacy survived underground. The historical lie of the Knights of Malta. The Pope gave all Templar assets to the Knights of Malta, their rivals. Today, the York Rite falsely claims both Templar and Maltese traditions. This is historically absurd. The Malta Knights were enforcers of church orthodoxy, not preservers of Templar wisdom. We look at the Scottish Rite, the true vessel, the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, the AASR, especially the 30th through 33rd degrees, upholds the true esoteric legacy. The Knights Kadosh are guardians of mystical knowledge, seekers of truth, not crusaders. The Knights of Kadosh and St. Andrew. The Knights Kadosh purify the soul. The Knights of St. Andrew serve as vigilant stewards of sacred principles. These degrees represent humility, wisdom, and service, not theatrical swordplay. Of course, besides the Mediterranean Pass, we see the secret alliance between Templars and Shriners. In Jerusalem, Christian Templars and Muslim Shriners began mutual respect while guarding holy sites. They exchanged scriptures and prayers. This spiritual alliance birthed the earliest interfaith brotherhood in the mystic tradition, the mystic tie that binds us all. Of course, Richard de Lionheart and Saladin. King Richard of England and Sultan Saladin were respected foes. When Richard was ill, Saladin sent his doctor. They honored each other with dignity, and even the lion's grip, that's how they shaked each other's hand. This story shows Templars were not religious bigots, but defenders of sacred honor across faith lines. The true Knights Templars are defenders of all faiths, and they protected pilgrims, not just Christians, but Jews and Muslims. They were spiritual warriors, not colonial crusaders, as we see today. Their creed was divine service, not religious supremacy, and Saladin, being of the same esoteric orders, promised Christians safe passage in and out of Jerusalem, and also protecting their places of worship and their relics. And as you see, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, who is it guarded by? Who are the Tylers? It's a Muslim family. So there you have that. The Hashemiyya, the Black Tents of Keter. The Hashemiyya, descended from Prophet Muhammad's uncle Hamza, guarded Mecca in black tents, known as the tribe of Keter. They became the early mystic protectors, the original Shriners, or should I say, Hashashin. The Moors taught the Crusaders. In Spain and North Africa, Moors taught European Templars geometry, astronomy, medicine, and the mystical arts. The fez, now misunderstood, came from Moorish scholars, not carnival showmen. Shahada and spiritual initiation. And Masons don't know that when they declare their belief in a supreme being, that's basically Tawheed from the Islamic perspective. Some Templars actually accepted Islam, such as Robert of St. Albans, who married Saladin's niece. They studied Arabic, read the Quran, and bore witness that there is no God but Allah. This spiritual initiation was a return to unity, not a betrayal of faith. Sufi influence and Qadir. A mystic named Qadir had a warrior order. After his death, a ritual drama commemorated his life. Europeans witnessed it and brought the rite to America, unknowingly birthing the ancient Arabic order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. The birth of the shrine in the U.S. European Masons misunderstood the depth of Sufi mysticism. They formed the shrine with rituals rooted in Moorish plays, but often stripped of substance and intention. The hidden black shrine. Before York Rite or American Shrindom, there existed a black shrine. Deuce Muhammad Ali initiated Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, and Elijah Muhammad. This was the real mystical current. Abdul Hamid Suleiman gave a warning. He came from Sudan, and he came to America to restore the authentic mystic shrine. But when he revealed they must embrace Islam, Masons rejected him. Truth was too uncomfortable. The York Rite's greatest hypocrisy. The York Rite claims neutrality yet excludes Islam and embraces colonial imagery. It denies its Eastern sources while dressing in Eastern symbols. This is spiritual imposture. Freemasonry's Moorish blueprint. The columns, the square, the ritual, all came from Africa and Arabia. The true builders were Sufis, Moors, and Hermeticists. Freemasonry without the East is a hollow temple, and you're told to travel to the East. The true Knights Templars today, they stand for divine justice, not dogma. They are mystics, defenders of truth, and friends to all Abrahamic faiths. They walk with light, not robes. If you want to honor De Molay and Freemasonry, study Sufism, Moorish science, and the Quran. Seek the tents of Kedr and the spirit of Saladin. Forget the play, remember the purpose. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. And of course, all my videos are for the purpose of fair use, which is protected under the copyright laws for the purpose of fair use, non-profit, education, free speech, entertainment, and information purposes. Thank you. All rights reserved.